Hello friends, Tom Downey here, joined by Brent Corobotiuc, the head risk manager over at BetDSI, excuse me. Brent, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's talk a little bit now about the NFL this week. One line that jumps out to me, I call it my curious line of the week. The Giants are actually favorites against the Redskins. What's going on there?
It's a little perplexing, is it, when you look at these numbers? But yeah, I mean, home field obviously counts for a whole lot. And you take a look at this division, the NFC East. I mean, everything's always so tight. And, you know, yeah, the Giants are 1-6, but maybe they're not that bad of a team. They were actually a sharp play last week at Atlanta. And, of course, they managed to cover that game, you know, a late cover, but they covered nonetheless. So, you know, the Giants are a decent, scrappy team. Obviously, they've got a solid running back and decent receivers and such, and their offensive line was, you know, not very impressive, and that was kind of just confirmed against Atlanta. But, you know, you look at Washington sitting there at 4-2, and it's like, you know, how good are they really? When you look at their, you know, points against differential is not really a key indicator in that, but they're only like a +5 net points in terms of, you know, for a team who's 4-2, you figure that number will be a heck of a lot higher just to, you know, to make a comparison. The Eagles, for example, are 3-4. They're a +16 in terms of points scored for and against. Dallas is a +17, and Washington's kind of +5 sitting there at 4-2. You kind of figured that would be a better number. I think, you know, other than the fact that home field, yeah, is worth 3 points, it's just the Giants perhaps aren't as bad as they look, and the Washington obviously doesn't, you know, they don't really instill a whole lot of confidence in terms of a team that can, you know, running the ball. They're not great at that. I mean, Alex Smith is a great, you know, clock manager and stuff like that. So there's really probably not a whole lot to distinguish between these two teams.
All right. How about then what I think is actually the best game of the week? It's Saints and Vikings, and it's actually a pick'em game right now, which seems fair to me. Both these teams are among the best in the NFC East.
Yeah, I mean, this game, I mean, it's probably, you know, it's safe to say that this is going to be probably the most heavily wagered game of the week, taking account off the board the Sunday night, Monday night, and Thursday night game. But this game's going to get a whole lot of action. You've got the Saints on the road at Vikings, and I think probably this line is a little surprising just because you would expect Minnesota perhaps to be favored a little bit higher. But I mean, their offensive line, you know, it hasn't been very good. They're, you know, way near the bottom in terms of pass protection. The run protection is way near the bottom. Quarterback's getting a whole lot of pressure. Now, obviously, they've got two stud wide receivers that really helps their cause a lot. But their offensive line hasn't been very good. By Minnesota standards, their defense really hasn't been very good this year either. So you get a Saints team that, you know, Peyton's, you know, probably one of the best coaches there are in the league right now. You're kind of assume that New Orleans is going to be able to move the ball because they move the ball just to, you know, against pretty much anyone. So, you know, I'm kind of not surprised really what the line is. You figure that Minnesota at home maybe will be slightly more of a favorite, but, you know, I'm looking at my bet count here, and when I say a bet count, I talk about the actual individual number of bets I've taken on this game, and I've got almost like 2.5 times more bets on Minnesota, but I actually do have sharp money the other way. This is one of the sharp plays of the week. We have New Orleans, so the line really hasn't moved that much, but New Orleans is one of the sharp plays of the week. This is what we kind of call a sharp and public split, when I've got more bets coming in on one side and more money the other side, and that's the case here with more money coming in on the Saints. Now, the reason for that more money, Tom, is that usually the sharp guys are betting your max wager, whereas your public guys are betting your, you know, $100 here, $100 there, $500 there. So I've got a wager count one way, and I've got money the other way. So this is kind of a good spot for us when we look in terms of bookmaking decisions, in terms of when we're going to kind of, you know, dig our feet in and kind of hold a position. This is one of those cases right here where we'll gladly be needing New Orleans in this game. And again, it's kind of a whole lot of confidence. We have basically, you know, the coach, their offense, and Minnesota is just really, you know, I think they've been a disappointment so far this season. Now, you look at them sitting at, you know, 4-2-1, I guess it is. Not really a disappointment perhaps in terms of the record, but, you know, this number is just kind of hanging around 1. Sharp money came New Orleans +1.5. I think it's basically going to stay there, and we'll probably, by kickoff, we'll probably be needing New Orleans small, and I think that's a good spot for us.
Wow. All right, well, you guys can get in on the action too at chatsports.com/bet. Use promo code LIVE120 when you sign up for a 120% deposit bonus. Put that $100, BetDSI will give you $120 for a grand total of $220 to bet with if you use promo code LIVE120 at chatsports.com/bet. We'll get into more sharp bets here in a second, but first, Brent, I want to talk about the Packers and the Rams. As of right now, it's Rams by 9. That would be the biggest spread Aaron Rodgers has ever faced as a starter, so I found that one fascinating. But Green Bay has not been very good on the road this year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, right now it's kind of with the Rams are one of those spots where we often have gone through in the past with the Patriots, where you kind of you're going to make them a favorite, and the question is, how big of a favorite really does it take to get divided action? Talking about the Saints Vikings being probably the most heavily wagered game of the week. Packers and Rams are going to be right behind that, and again, it's just a whole lot of people that are looking at Green Bay catching 9.5 points, and they're jumping on that. So I've got a wager count in terms of the actual number of bets I've taken is quite one-sided favoring Green Bay. It's almost 4-1 favoring Green Bay, which is really a strong count that way. So we finally got into a position where we got money on the other side against the Rams. The Rams have been one of those games or one of those teams where we haven't needed them ever at all so far this season. I mean, people have just been betting the heck out of the Rams. So kind of a good spot for us in that. I'm getting action that way in terms of getting it on Green Bay. By kickoff, I bet will probably be balanced. This line still, is holding pretty solid. I think at 9.5 right now. I think there are some 9s out in the market, but anytime you look at Green Bay getting all those points with the offense that they have, it kind of makes a whole lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, this is you probably looked at the start of the season and Green Bay was going to, if they were ever going to be a 9-point dog, you just kind of go back in the years. I mean, it's just probably just never happened so long as Rodgers has been at the helm. So, like I said, I got a lot of public money on this one, pretty much all Green Bay, and the line barely hasn't moved at all, just sitting at 9.5, and we're kind of waiting it out, seeing if there's, a correction in the market where the sharp money jumps on Green Bay, whether they're waiting, for it to go back to 10 and jump on Green Bay, whether the sharps are just going to stay away from this completely. But the public so far is pretty much all over Green Bay.
All right, you mentioned one sharp game of the Saints and the Vikings. What else is the sharp money flowing in on right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a slow week, actually, for sharp money. Usually we have, there's probably, 5 games almost every week that you can pretty much count on sharp money. And the Eagles actually are one of those games. The Eagles are, a favorite, I'm going to say on the road at the Jaguars. And it kind of seems fitting that the Jaguars, they've played in London so many times, it almost, makes sense to make them a home team. They've been over there so much. But Philadelphia minus 2.5 is where I got sharp money. That line's now up to 3 minus 120 or 3.5. So it is I guess technically Jacksonville is the home team, but that's one of those games over in Wembley, which would be an early start. Philadelphia, I mean, you just look at them and they lost Ajayi, and Wentz kind of just doesn't seem, he's a little bit tentative, I think, so far, it looks like. But, he still, Jacksonville, I mean, their defense has been just, quite a disappointment so far. Bortles getting benched last week. They haven't been able to run the ball, seems like they lost their running back. So I don't think there's a whole lot to choose between those teams, but I think grabbing, Philadelphia 2.5 certainly was a sharp play. I've also got public money on the Eagles as well. So it looks like the public is kind of fading Jacksonville. My wager count, in favor of Philadelphia. And again, we're talking about the actual individual number of bets I've taken, almost 4-1 favoring the Eagles. So that's a pretty strong count. We talked about New Orleans already, and the Bears. I mean, the Bears have been one of those teams where the public's really been on a whole lot lately, all season long pretty much. And here we are, 7.5 point favorite now at home to the Jets. That line was 7. That's where the sharp money came in. So I have sharp money on Chicago, minus 7 at home to the Jets. And again, if you want to make a case to go against the Jets, it's probably not all that hard. The quarterback is, in a word, has been pretty bad so far this season. Looks like they lost their running back Powell for the rest of the season as well. Anderson, who's probably their best receiver, he's been missing practice this week as well. They had Terrell Pryor, wide receiver, had a decent game last week, and they cut him as well. So really kind of weird what's going on with the Jets. Can't figure that out. But Chicago minus 7 was a sharp play. As I mentioned, they're sitting at 7.5 right now. And we do this show on Thursday. There was a sharp play on Thursday with the Miami Houston under 45.5. So 4 sharp plays in total this week, but 3 coming up for the weekend.
All right, folks. Well, you can go bet on all those odds at chatsports.com/bet. Use promo code LIVE120 when you sign up to get a 120% deposit bonus. Brent, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.